Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're finally going to be talking about the collab album between Blu and Oh No, A Long, Red-Hot Los Angeles Summer Night. So do you ever have those rappers where, as much as you might like them, they just frustrate the hell out of you? Artists that you fully know are capable of delivering brilliance, but then can meander down some weird paths that are far less potent or good than they should be? Yeah, unsurprising to anybody, Blu's kind of in that camp for me, probably is for a lot of people. And to some extent, given his comprehensive discography and varied array of collaborations, I'd argue at this point the biggest issue might be quality control. Because when Blu is focused and chooses to refine a project, we get near classics like Below the Heavens, with stellar production and some really potent rapping and ideas. But on the flip side, for as great of a rapper as Blu can be with a taste for weirder production and beats, the fact that he doesn't have more projects I would consider near classics is kind of alarming, especially when said production can feel compromised or messy, and from people from which you would expect better. As much as I still like 2014's Good to Be Home and some of his scattered EPs, I can't deny a couple of the mixing and mastering questions leveled at them, and I stand behind the criticisms I had of 2015's Bad Neighbor with M.E.D and Madlib. Hell, I'd probably say it's even worse going back to it now, because I'm still a little bit in awe that Madlib delivered such a slapdash effort. He's a much better producer than that album indicates. Now, granted, there's been rumors that Blu's relationship with Madlib has been contentious for years, so who the hell knows what could have gone on behind the scenes. But when I heard that Blu was teaming up with Madlib's younger brother and veteran producer in his own right, Oh No, and had won back some critical acclaim with yet another Back to Basics on the West project, I was kind of reassured. Hell, people were saying that Good to Be Home was a trial run in comparison with this, so that's exciting. And let's not waste time. What do we get from A Long, Red-Hot Los Angeles Summer Night? Well, I'll be honest, this is the sort of project that puts me in a bit of an odd situation, because it's deliberately calling back to an era and tone of West Coast hip-hop I'm inclined to like, with the dense flows and production, all to serve a somewhat conventional but colorful narrative structure that shows more polished than I've come to expect from Blu, although not short on ambition. But when you link your story to more of a structured narrative like this, you can't really avoid some of the questions that will come along with it. And for as much as Blu is looking to entrench some of his storytelling in this arc amidst, say, albums like The Chronic or Good Kid Mad City or even My Crazy Life, if I'm being brutally honest, I would argue this might even fall short of Good to Be Home. It's not bad by any means, but not nearly as hard-hitting as I was hoping for, even if the production might sound more lush and cinematic. You know what, in fact, let's start off with some of that narrative though, because while it is kinda loose, it does provide enough continuity from song to song, and it is territory that it's been pretty well trod before in hip-hop. Blu's flexing, he's fooling around, he draws some unwelcome attention as he picks up some companionship for the evening and night, he then gets robbed blind, possibly as a consequence of that, and then enacts some bloody revenge for which he's then arrested and sent to jail, only to have his bail get posted and he's back out in the streets to do it all again, all set against the stylized neon of a Los Angeles summer night. It's a story that's playing at some broad, bloody strokes and a lot of melodrama, so while it might not be exactly surprising that despite the frenetic wordplay, it's more about painting a picture than adding insight or deeper layers of subtext. Hell, many people have described this album might play even more like a film, and I can definitely hear that in the fast-talking cinematic scope of the style and the violence. Hell, you know what? I might even give Blu some props for keeping certain guest artists as characters in his narrative, with M.E.D, Cassius King, Definite, and Danelle Smoke serving as friends that help plan some of the revenge. And yet here's where we encounter the first hint of a problem, because for as conventional as a narrative as this might be in hip-hop at least, it seems like we're missing plenty of obvious chances to amplify the subtext and drama, make the story feel a little bit more unique. Hell, the closer we get to any of Blu's crew questioning his bloody revenge plans comes up on Stalkers, and even then it's more about reinforcement than the actual conflict, and that's where Blu decides to drop a homophobic slur that might be about the last part of the throwback vibe to that era that he should emulate. I mean, I get why it's there, but it didn't have to be. And yet, when you start reading between the lines, it's a little hard to avoid questions that I think Blu would rather you not think about that hard. It might be a bit of a minor nitpick to note how the only place women really show up in this story or part of the narrative is either as eye candy or duplicitous scammers. Yeah, there's a verse on Jail Cypher, but it makes less sense the more you think about it. And that wouldn't really be much of an issue in a world where Kendrick Lamar and Lil Wayne didn't create the masterclass of this sort of song and arc on Mona Lisa last year. But But what gets a little bit more alarming is Murder Case, which opens up with an homage to Murder Was the Case by Snoop Dogg, West Coast classic, and then proceeds to highlight all the ways that Blue as the protagonist could be innocent. From the systemic issues that might operate as contributing factors, to corrupt police trying to restrain him, from the hypocritical enforcement of self-defense laws to the possibility he was even framed, all which would feel like very nuanced, very valid points if they weren't following a song where he was very clearly apprehended after the crime was committed by him and described in detail. So are we not supposed to see the connective tissue between songs for this narrative? Or is this just highlighting the defenses that can be used by others, but given Blue's position opposite the LAPD, he's not afforded? It's not like songs like It Never Rains in South LA don't highlight systemic failings that puts him where he is, but it does kind of get harder to sympathize when you get songs like Pop Shots, where the justification of betrayal starts to seem increasingly flimsy, or go a step further to Do the Crime, where not only does he kill his target, but also all his target's friends, and then when he sets the house on fire, his target's tied up girl in the closet as well. So, okay, maybe the larger point is about highlighting the systemic cycle of violence within LA to this day. The city is as much of a character as all the MCs here, kind of noir in that respect, and that would kind of fit with the final song, Fresh Out, showing Blue ready to repeat the cycle all over again, but some of that subtext and commentary that would be the natural extension seems strangely absent in the content, asking the audience to make a leap that feels oddly unsupported in comparison with how, say, Vince Staples layered it into the subtext on FM. But then again, that project was trying for an urgency in a lot of its storytelling, and the fact that it was relevant today, very politically charged, that a long red-hot Los Angeles summer night can't really go for. It's more laid back, a callback to the era where the flash and the flare didn't demand the questions in favor of cultivating more of the vibe. And sure, there's a place for that. I'd argue that my favorite YG album, Stay Brazy, used a lot of the same tactics, but YG's never been the same sort of lyricist as Blue was. Stay Brazy was still politically charged, and really, for as much as this project wants to be a deep-seated tribute to the West, we already have Good to Be Home, which was aiming a fair bit higher than this. And look, I already know how that looks. Of course, I'm going to be the one who prefers the dusty, lo-fi, lyrical double album in comparison with the slicker, tighter, more eminently accessible project. But the truth is that if there's one thing that actually saves this album for me beyond the narrative issues, it's Oh No's production. Well, okay, that's not quite fair. Every MC that Blue brings on board to this album does deliver a solid, if kind of interchangeable verse at points, with the highlights for me coming from both TriState and Montage 1 on the Robbery, some really good back and forth interplay on Liquor Store, and especially from Carl Rowe and LocalBlac on Jail Cypher. Hell, even despite some questionable dropped rhymes, I'd argue Blue's really on his game here as well. There's a ton of flair and internal structure to Pop Shots or the Los Angeles Anthem or It Never Rains in South LA. But if I'm being brutally honest, it's Oh No's lush, crystal clear West Coast grooves and texture spanning G-Funk, West Coast boom bap, and jazz is what pulls me back to this, all infused with a frenetic energy that never once flags. Hell, for once you can actually make the argument Blue's got some real hooks this time around for these songs, from Kezia's cooing off the dense energy of the Los Angeles Anthem, to Oh No's own lyrical additions to Pop Shots. And when you pair with the bombastic squonk of the horns and the sharp pianos on Roundabout Midnight, or the shuddering synths and jingling knock on Boogie to Flex, or the prominent chill flutes and cascades and champagne that makes the most of the really abrupt flip into the seething guitar and the synth line touches around the Robbery, and then when you follow it up with the frenetic horn-infused jazz of Liquor Store and Made the Call, there's a ton of in-your-face flash and style and groove on display. Hell, you can make the argument that there are songs that might even be a little bit too dense, like the jittery cascades of snares and pianos on the hooks of Straight No Chaser, or that synth that's slathered on to Do the Crime. But you know what? If I think I was going to take a real issue with the production, it's more that the vibe and tone doesn't really show much variation or deeper complexity. A lot of clean flair and style and gloss and bounce, but not a lot of depth, especially even in the low end. Hell, even the songs that are supposed to sound darker or more sultry don't quite vary the mood. But again, I'm finding myself looking for subtlety and complexity when, with every listen, I'm realizing it's not really the point. If anything, what Blue and Oh No are trying to create, it's a West Coast 90s gangsta B-movie that we've all seen before in some variety, where there's probably good performances and a lot of style, but everything's a little little broad, kind of oversold, and the plot's about the furthest thing from the actual point. And while I will say that Blue's delivered more emotional depth and complexity before, this is a project more comfortable just indulging in the familiar, for better or for worse. I mean, it's a fun nostalgia trip with some modern trappings, and while Blue can absolutely do better, it's still fine enough for me. Netting a light 7 out of 10, and recommended for those who are looking for something flashy from the West Coast, both in the production and the lyrical flair, but might not be all that deep. I do hope that Blue is able to bring back some of the insight and greater experimentation in the future, though. But in the meantime, it's fine enough. I get the appeal, so I'll take it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Man alive, this review has been a living hell to film, but hey, you don't want to hear about my issues. You want to buy or stream the album, links down there below. I got the poll up there. I'm curious where you guys fall on this. Given it's Blue, my response to his work in the past has been kind of all over the place, and as the response has been as well, so I have no idea how that's going to turn out. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And hey, if you want to support the channel, link to my Patreon is right over there. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.